The ship called Horizon's Edge moved slowly through the dark space. It was a large vessel, built for carrying important people from many different worlds. The walls were white and clean. The lights hummed softly. Everything looked perfect and peaceful. But knew that looks could lie. He walked through the lower deck with a heavy box in his arms. His clothes were simple and worn. His face was calm and quiet. He did not look like anyone special. He looked like a man who fixed things and carried things and stayed out of the way. That was exactly what he wanted. Had been on many ships before this one. He had seen many worlds. He had done things that would make most beings run away in fear. But here on this ship he was nobody, just an apprentice, just a worker, just a human. And that was fine with him. He put the box down in the storage room and wiped his hands on his pants. His friend was there, working on a broken machine. She had short black hair and clever eyes. She looked up when he came in. "Another delivery?" she asked. "Water filters for the upper deck," said. "The delegation does not like the taste of recycled water." Made a sound of annoyance. "Of course they do not. They also do not like our food. They do not like our air. They do not like anything about us." Smiled a little. "They are guests, we must be polite." "You are too patient," said. She pointed her tool at him. "One day someone will push you too far." "Maybe," said, "but not today." He left the storage room and walked toward the upper levels. The ship had 7 different species on board. There were the tall blue who spoke in whispers. There were the rock-skinned who never sat down. There were the small furry who laughed at everything. And there were the who thought they were better than everyone else. They had silver skin that shined like metal. Their eyes were like crystals, cold and beautiful. They moved like dancers and spoke like kings. They believed that the universe belonged to them, and everyone else was just borrowing space. Their leader was Princess. Had seen her only twice since she came aboard. Both times she had looked at the human crew like they were insects. She did not speak to them. She did not even seem to see them. To her, humans were nothing. Understood. Many species felt this way about humans. Humans were small. Humans were soft. Humans had no claws, no armor, no special powers. In a galaxy full of monsters and giants, humans seemed weak. But knew something that most beings did not. Weak things did not survive, and humans had survived for a very long time. He reached the upper deck and walked toward the water filtration room. The hallway was wide and bright. Alien delegates walked past him, talking in languages he could understand but pretended not to. He kept his head down and stayed close to the wall. Then he heard footsteps behind him, many footsteps, and a voice like cold silver. "Stop!" Stopped, he turned around slowly. Princess stood before him. She was tall and beautiful in the way that ice was beautiful. Her silver skin caught the light. Her crystal eyes looked at him like he was dirt on her shoe. Behind her stood 4 guards with long spears. "You are in my path," she said. Looked around. The hallway was very wide. There was plenty of room for her to pass, but he understood. This was not about space. This was about power. "I apologize, Princess," he said. He stepped aside and bowed his head. Did not move. She kept staring at him. "What is your name?" she asked. "Princess." She repeated. She said his name like it tasted bad. "You are human." "Yes, Princess." "I have heard about humans," she said. "You come from a small planet at the edge of nowhere. You have no great technology. You have no great history. You are like crawling insects spreading across the galaxy, pretending to be important." Said nothing. He kept his eyes on the floor. Stepped closer. "Look at me when I speak to you." Raised his eyes. He looked at her calmly. There was no anger in his face. There was no fear. There was nothing at all. This seemed to bother her. "You do not seem afraid," she said. "Should I be afraid, Princess?" Her eyes narrowed. Every creature should be afraid of those above them. That is the natural order, the strong rule, the weak serve. Humans are weak. Therefore you serve. I understand, Princess. Do you? She leaned closer. I wonder if you truly understand how small you are, how meaningless. My ancestors built empires while yours were still living in caves. We have conquered worlds. We have shaped the destiny of the galaxy. And you carry boxes. Nodded slowly. Someone must carry the boxes, Princess. For a moment looked surprised. Then she laughed. It was not a kind laugh. At least you know your place, she said. She turned and walked away. Her guards followed her. Watch them go. His face showed nothing. Later that night he sat in the small room he shared with other workers. Came to find him. She looked angry. I heard what happened, she said. That princess is a monster. How could you just stand there and take it? What should I have done? Asked. Something, anything. You are not some helpless worker, you are. I am nobody, said quietly, and I want to stay that way. Sat down next to him. They do not know what you have done, what you have survived. If they knew. If they knew, they would treat me differently. Some would fear me, some would want to use me, some would want to kill me. Looked out the small window at the stars. I have had enough of that. Let them think I am nothing. It is easier. Is it not lonely? Asked softly. Thought about this. Sometimes, but pride is a luxury. Survival is a skill. I learned that a long time ago. Before could answer, an alarm started to ring. Red lights flashed in the hallway. A voice came through the speakers. All crew to stations. We have detected ships approaching. Unknown origin. All crew to stations. Stood up slowly. His eyes changed. Just for a moment something dark and cold moved behind them. Something old, something dangerous. What is it? Asked. I do not know yet, said. But I have a feeling our journey just became more interesting. He walked out of the room. Behind him the alarms kept screaming. And somewhere in the darkness of space, something hungry was coming closer. The observation hall was the most beautiful room on the ship. It had a ceiling made of glass, and through that glass, you could see a million stars burning in the darkness. The floor was polished until it shined like water. Long tables held food and drinks from a dozen different worlds. Princess stood at the center of it all, like a queen in her palace. The alien delegates had gathered to hear her speak. The blue stood tall and silent. The crossed their stone arms. The little sat on high chairs, their ears twitching. Everyone watched the princess with careful eyes. Thank you all for coming, said. Her voice was smooth and strong. I have asked you here to discuss our journey through the Crimson Veil. A delegate raised his hand. The Crimson Veil is dangerous territory. Many ships have been lost there. I am aware, said. That is why we must work together. Some of us, she paused, and her eyes moved toward the human crew standing near the walls, are more capable of survival than others. A few delegates laughed quietly. The humans said nothing. Commander stood in the corner, his face like stone. He was the captain of the ship, a man with gray hair and hard eyes. He had been in space for 40 years. He had seen war and death and things that would break most minds. But he did not speak. He just watched. The Crimson Veil is home to many dangers, continued. But the greatest of these are the room became very quiet. Even the stopped laughing. Everyone knew about they were the monsters that other monsters feared. They stood 3 meters tall and had 6 limbs, each ending in claws that could cut through metal. Their skin was like black armor. Their mouths were full of teeth made for tearing flesh. They did not hunt because they were hungry. They hunted because they loved it. They hunted for sport. They have destroyed entire fleets, said, his stone voice rumbling. What makes you think we can pass through their territory safely? Smiled. It was a cold, confident smile. Because they do not attack strength, they attack weakness, and we are not weak. She looked around the room. Her eyes stopped on, who was quietly refilling a water container near the back wall. Well, she said loudly, most of us are not weak. More laughter, louder this time. Raised her hand and pointed at, you there, human, come here. put down the container. He walked forward slowly. Every eye in the room watched him. He stopped in front of the princess and waited. Neil said, looked at her for a moment, then he got down on his knees. Look at this, said to the crowd. This is a human, the species that thinks it deserves a seat at the Galactic Council, the species that believes it is our equal, she laughed. What do you see? I see soft skin that tears easily. I see no claws, no armor, no special senses. I see a creature that nature forgot to make dangerous. She walked around like he was an animal in a cage. If they came for us right now, what would this human do? Would he fight? Would he run? No, he would die quickly, easily, like all humans die when they face true predators. Stayed on his knees, his face showed nothing. Stood near the door, her hands in fists. Her whole body was shaking with anger, but caught her eye and gave a tiny shake of his head. Stay calm, do nothing. Bent down and looked into his eyes. Do you have anything to say, human? No, princess, said quietly. You are correct. Humans are soft, humans are weak. We are not built for fighting. At least you admit it, said. She stood up and waved her hand. Go back to your work and remember your place. Stood up slowly and walked back to the wall. The delegates returned to their conversations. Some looked uncomfortable. Most did not care. Commander finally moved. He walked to and spoke quietly. You did not have to do that. It does not matter, said. It matters to me, said. It matters to every human on this ship. Let them laugh, said. Laughter is harmless. What comes next may not be. Frowned, what do you mean? Before could answer, the lights flickered. A low alarm began to sound. Not the loud emergency alarm from before. This was different. This was worse. A voice came through the speakers. It was the ship's computer. Warning, 3 vessels detected on approach vector. Signature identified, hunting pack. Time to intercept, 47 minutes. The room went silent. Every alien face showed the same thing, fear. Princess stopped smiling. In the next few hours, everything changed. The alien delegates ran to their rooms and locked the doors. The crew prepared the ship's few weapons. Commander sent out distress signals, but everyone knew the truth. Help was too far away. They were alone. Found in the engine room, she was checking the power systems. They are coming, she said. Her voice was tight with worry. Yes, said. They have never let a ship escape. They kill everyone. They keep the bodies as trophies. She looked at him with fear in her eyes. What are we going to do? Was quiet for a long moment. He looked down at his hands. Simple hands. Workers' hands. But those hands had done things that would haunt most people forever. He said slowly, do you remember what I told you when we first met? About why I wanted to be invisible? You said you were tired of fighting. I am. He took a deep breath. But some things are worth fighting for. Some people are worth protecting. Understood. Her eyes went wide. You are going to fight them, she whispered. Alone. Not fight them, said. Hunt them. He walked to his room without another word. He opened a hidden panel in the wall that nobody knew about. Inside was a long case covered in dust. He had not opened it in 3 years. He had hoped he would never open it again. But hope was a luxury too. He lifted the lid. Inside were his weapons. Each one was old and worn and stained with memories. Each one had a name. Each one had a story. Each one had killed things that should not have been. Picked up his knife first. It was black and curved and very sharp. He had made it himself, long ago, from the claw of the first monster he ever killed. Then he put on his coat. It was leather, dark and heavy, covered in scars and burns. It did not look like armor, but it had saved his life more times than he could count. Finally, he looked at himself in the small mirror on the wall. The quiet worker was gone. The hunter was awake. Outside the ship, 3 black vessels moved closer. Inside those vessels, 12 warriors prepared their weapons and their traps. They laughed with excitement. They could smell fear on the ship ahead. They had no idea what was waiting for them. The ships came out of the darkness like black arrows. They were fast and ugly and built for one purpose only: killing. Their hulls were covered with the bones of their victims, painted red with old blood. Warning symbols glowed on their sides, written in a language that meant death in every corner of the galaxy. Commander stood on the bridge and watched them approach. His crew worked around him, trying to find some way to escape. But there was no escape. They were faster. They were stronger. They always caught their prey. "How long until they reach us?" asked. 12 minutes, a crew member said. His voice was shaking. "Weapons? We have 3 pulse cannons. Light defense only. It will not even scratch their armor." Closed his eyes. He had known this mission was dangerous. The Crimson Veil was territory, but the Galactic Council had insisted. The alien delegates needed to reach the summit. Peace was more important than risk. Now they would all pay for that decision. The door to the bridge opened. Princess walked in, her silver face pale with fear. Behind her came her 4 guards, looking just as scared. "Commander," she said, trying to sound commanding but failing, "I demand that you do something. Use your weapons, call for help, do anything." "We have called for help," said calmly. "The nearest ship is 6 hours away. We will be dead in 1. His crystal eyes went wide. Then sacrifice some of your crew, send them out in escape pods, let them chase them instead of us." Turned to look at her. His eyes were cold as ice. "I will not sacrifice my people to save you, Princess." "They are just humans," said desperately. "They are nothing. I am royalty. I am important." "Everyone on this ship is important," said. "Everyone on this ship is under my protection, and I do not trade lives." Before could argue, the ship shook hard. A terrible sound of metal breaking filled the air. The lights flickered and turned red. "Hull breach," a crew member shouted. "Cargo Bay 7, they are boarding." It had begun. Deep in the lower levels of the ship, the first came through the torn metal like a nightmare coming to life. It was huge, almost touching the ceiling. Its 6 limbs clicked against the floor. Its black armor skin reflected the emergency lights. Its mouth opened, showing rows of teeth as long as fingers. Behind it came more. 4, 5, 6 of them pouring into the cargo bay like a flood of death. A security team was waiting for them. 10 humans with pulse rifles, hiding behind metal containers. They opened fire the moment they appeared. The blue energy bolts hit them and did nothing. The creatures did not even slow down. The first security officer died before he could scream. A claw took his head from his shoulders. The second died a moment later, torn in half by powerful arms. The third, the fourth, the fifth, they all fell in seconds. The last 5 tried to run. They did not get far. When it was over, they stood among the bodies and made sounds of joy. They were laughing. This was fun for them. This was sport. Their leader, the biggest one, the Alpha, raised its head and sniffed the air. It could smell fear everywhere on the ship. So much fear, so many victims waiting. It gave an order in the language. The hunting pack split up. They would search the entire ship. They would find everyone. They would kill everyone. The hunt had begun. On the upper decks, the alien delegates hid in their rooms. They pushed furniture against their doors. They turned off their lights. They tried not to breathe too loudly. Princess was in the safest room on the ship, a reinforced chamber near the center, with walls thick enough to stop most weapons. Her guards stood around her, their spears ready, but their hands were shaking. Sat in the corner, hugging her knees to her chest. She could hear the screams through the walls. She could hear them moving, their claws scratching against metal floors. She could smell blood. For the first time in her life, she understood what it meant to be prey. All her pride, all her power, all her beautiful words about natural order, none of it mattered now. She was just meat waiting to be caught. "Where are your gods now, Princess?" A small voice in her head whispered. "Where is your strength?" She had no answer. In another part of the ship, moved through the shadows like he was made of darkness itself. His coat hung heavy on his shoulders. His knife was in his hand. His eyes saw everything. He could hear the coming, two of them moving down a corridor about 50 meters away. They were being careful, checking every room, enjoying the hunt. They did not know he was there. Good. Moved faster, taking a different path. He knew this ship better than anyone. He had spent months learning every corner, every hidden passage, every weakness. He had done this for a reason. He always did this, because knew something that most people forgot. Preparation was the difference between the hunter and the hunted. He reached a junction where two corridors met. He stopped and waited. He slowed his breathing until it was almost nothing. He made his body completely still. He became invisible. The first came around the corner. Moved. His knife went into the soft spot under this jaw before the creature knew he was there. The blade angled upward into the brain. The made a small sound of surprise and then fell, dead before it hit the ground. The second heard the body fall. It turned, claws raised, ready to fight, but was already inside its guard. He was too close for the claws to work. His knife flashed twice, once across the tendons of the right arms, once across the left. The limbs went dead. Then drove a spike through its eye and into its brain. 2 down, 10 to go. Did not stop to rest. He did not stop to feel anything. He simply moved on to find the next one. This was what he did. This was what he was. Behind the quiet face and the simple clothes, there was something that most humans had forgotten they had. Something old. Something from the days when humans were small and soft and surrounded by predators much bigger than them. The will to survive. The refusal to give up. The ability to become more dangerous than anything that threatened them. Humans were not born with claws, so they made claws. Humans were not born with armor, so they made armor. Humans were not born as predators, so they became something worse. They became hunters of predators, and was the best hunter humanity had ever produced. They did not know it yet, but they had made a terrible mistake when they boarded this ship. They had come here looking for easy prey. Instead, they had found the one thing in the galaxy that they should have feared. They had found a human who refused to be prey. The hunting pack had split into groups of 2 and 3. They moved through the ship like shadows, checking every room, every corner, every hiding place. They were patient. They were thorough. They had done this 1,000 times before. But something was wrong. 2 of their brothers had gone silent. The Alpha sent a signal through their communication link, but there was no answer, just silence. This was strange. They did not lose contact. They did not fail to answer. The Alpha growled a warning to the others. Be careful, something is happening. In the maintenance tunnels below the main deck, crawled through the darkness. The tunnels were small and tight, made for repair robots, not people, but was thin and flexible. He could fit in places that seemed impossible. He could hear above him walking slowly down a corridor. Its claws clicked against the metal floor. Click, click, click. The sound was steady and calm. The creature felt no fear. That would change. Found an access panel and pushed it open slowly, making no sound. He pulled himself up into a storage closet and waited. That was getting closer. 30 meters, 20, 10. The creature stopped right outside the closet door. It sniffed the air. It could smell something. Blood, maybe, or fear. It reached for the door. Burst out. His knife went into this throat before it could react. Black blood sprayed across the wall. The creature tried to scream, but no sound came out. Its voice was already destroyed. It fell back, claws swinging wildly. Dodged left, dodged right, then stepped in close and drove his blade into the gap between the armor plates on its chest. The shuddered and went still. 3 down. Did not stop. He moved deeper into the ship, following sounds, following smells, following his instincts. He had spent 20 years learning how to hunt things that were bigger and stronger than him. He knew their weaknesses. He knew their patterns. He knew exactly how they thought. The thought like all apex predators. They expected their prey to run and hide. They expected fear and panic. They did not expect to be hunted back. That was their weakness. Found the next group in the medical bay. 3 of them, searching through cabinets and destroying equipment for fun. They were laughing, making sounds of pleasure as they tore apart machines that had been built to save lives. Watch from the shadows of a ventilation shaft. He studied them. He planned. Then he acted. First, he threw a small device into the center of the room. It was a flash grenade, modified to produce a frequency that would hurt ears. The explosion of light and sound made all 3 creatures scream and cover their eyes. Dropped from the ceiling. The first died with a blade through the back of its skull. The second died when cut the main blood vessel in its leg and let it bleed out in seconds. The third managed to swing one claw at him, but was already moving, sliding under the attack and coming up with his knife aimed at the creature's heart. 6 down, 6 to go. On the bridge, Commander watched the security feeds with growing amazement. He could not believe what he was seeing. A single man, moving through the ship like death itself, killing creatures that had destroyed armies. "How is this possible?" he whispered. Stood beside him. She had come to the bridge to help, but now she just watched the screens. "That is," she said quietly, "the real." "Who is he?" asked. "What is he?" Thought about how to answer. "Have you heard of the Hunter of the Crimson Veil, the ghost who walks alone?" His face went pale. "Those are legends, stories to scare children." "They are not stories," said. "They are memories. Memories of what one human can do when he decides that he will not be prey." The Alpha was getting angry now. 6 of its hunters were dead. 6. This had never happened before. Not against soft, weak humans, not against anyone. It gathered the remaining 5 hunters and gave new orders. They would stay together. They would move as a pack. They would find whoever was killing their brothers and tear him apart piece by piece. But had expected this. He had been counting on it. When predators were confused, they grouped together. It was instinct, safety in numbers, but groups were slow. Groups were loud, and groups could be led into traps. Moved ahead of them, setting his trap. He opened certain doors and closed others. He turned on lights in some corridors and turned them off in others. He created a path that looked safe but led exactly where he wanted them to go. They followed the path. They did not know they were being herded like animals. They reached the Environmental Control Center. It was a large room full of machines that controlled the ship's air and temperature. The Alpha went in first, its eyes scanning for enemies. Sealed the doors behind them. Then he started venting the oxygen out of the room. They realized what was happening too late. They tried to break through the doors, but the doors were made of reinforced steel. They tried to break the walls, but the walls were too thick. The air got thinner and thinner. 3 of them fell unconscious from lack of oxygen. The Alpha and 1 other managed to break through an emergency panel and escape into a smaller corridor, but they were weak now, slow, desperate. Was waiting in that corridor. The smaller lunged at him, stepped aside and let it crash into the wall. Then he put a blade through the back of its neck. 9 down. The Alpha faced him alone now. It was the biggest had ever seen. Old scars covered its black armor. Its eyes burned with rage and something that might have been respect. "You," the Alpha said in broken standard language, "you are different. You are not prey." "No," said calmly, "I am not." "What are you?" Looked at the monster that had killed thousands. He showed no fear. He showed no anger. He showed nothing at all. "I am human," he said. "That is all I have ever been." The Alpha laughed. It was a terrible sound. "Then you will die like a human." It charged, but did not run. He did not hide. He stepped forward to meet the monster head-on. because that was what hunters did. The Alpha was not like the others. It was older, smarter, and far more dangerous. It had lived for 300 years and killed more living things than most species could count. Its body was covered in scars from battles it had won. Every mark was a victory. Every scar was a trophy. It looked at the small human standing before it and felt something strange. Not fear. The Alpha had never felt fear, but curiosity. How had this tiny creature killed 9 of its hunters? It did not matter. Soon the human would be dead, and the Alpha would add another scar to its collection. The Alpha attacked first. It moved faster than something so big should be able to move. Its claws cut through the air like 6 swords swinging at once. Ducked under the first strike. He jumped over the second. He twisted away from the third. But the fourth claw caught him across the chest, tearing through his coat and cutting into his flesh. Blood sprayed across the corridor walls, stumbled back holding his wound. The Alpha laughed. First blood is mine, human. Soon, last blood will be mine too. Said nothing. He just watched. He studied. Even as his blood dripped onto the floor, his mind was working, looking for patterns, looking for weaknesses. The Alpha attacked again. This time was ready. He did not try to block the claws. That would be suicide. Instead, he moved with them, letting them pass by him so close that he could feel the wind on his face. He moved like water flowing around rocks. He moved like smoke escaping from a fire. And every time he moved, his knife found flesh. A cut here, a cut there, small wounds. Nothing that would kill the Alpha, but wounds add up. Blood loss adds up. Pain adds up. The Alpha roared with frustration. It swung harder, faster, more wildly. But wild attacks were easier to predict. Kept dancing, kept cutting, kept bleeding the monster slowly. Hold still, the Alpha screamed. Fight like a warrior. I am fighting like a human, said. We do not have your strength, we do not have your armor, so we learn to be patient. We learn to endure. We learn to let our enemies destroy themselves. The Alpha charged forward with all 6 limbs, trying to crush against the wall. Jumped at the last second, using the Alpha's own back as a stepping stone to leap over it. He landed behind the creature and slashed across the tendons in its rear legs. The Alpha fell to its knees. Black blood poured from a dozen wounds. The Alpha was weakening, but it was not done yet, not even close. With a sound of pure rage, it spun around and caught with a backhand blow that sent him flying into the wall. Felt his ribs crack. Pain exploded through his body like fire. He hit the floor and tried to get up, but his body would not listen. Everything hurt too much. The Alpha crawled toward him, leaving a trail of black blood. You are good, human. Better than any prey I have ever hunted. But you are still just prey, and prey always loses in the end. It reached down and grabbed by the throat, lifting him off the ground. Its claws dug into his skin. It began to squeeze. Could not breathe. Black spots appeared in his vision. He was dying. But his hands were still free. He reached into his coat and pulled out his last weapon. It was a small cylinder, no bigger than his finger. A thermal charge, enough explosive power to destroy a tank. He shoved it into the Alpha's open mouth. The Alpha's eyes went wide. It tried to spit the charge out but had already triggered the timer. 3 seconds. The Alpha threw aside and clawed at its own face, trying to get the device out. 2 seconds. Hit the ground and rolled behind a metal support beam. 1 second. The explosion was massive. When looked up, the Alpha's head was gone. Its body stood for a moment, confused, not understanding that it was already dead. Then it fell forward with a crash that shook the entire corridor. The Alpha was dead. The last on the ship was dead. Lay on his back, staring at the ceiling. Every part of his body hurt. His ribs were broken. His chest was torn open. His throat was bruised from where the Alpha had choked him. But he was alive. He started to laugh. It was a small, painful laugh, but it was real. 12, he whispered to himself. That makes 12. Somewhere in the ship, the survivors were watching. Commander stared at the security feed with his mouth open, was crying, though she did not know if it was from relief or something else. The alien delegates peeked out from their hiding places, unable to believe what they were seeing. Princess watched from the reinforced chamber. She saw the human lying in a pool of his own blood, surrounded by the bodies of monsters. She saw him laughing despite his wounds. She saw him get up slowly, painfully, and start walking toward the medical bay. He moved like a man who had done this before, like a man who expected to do it again. For the first time in her long life, felt something she had never felt before. It was not fear. It was not disgust. It was not even respect, though that was part of it. It was shame. She had called this man an insect. She had made him kneel. She had told everyone that humans were weak and worthless. And now that same man had just killed 12 apex predators single-handedly while she hid in a room and did nothing. Everything she believed about humans, about strength, about the natural order, it was all wrong. She had been wrong. And the truth hurt more than any claw ever could. Reached the medical bay and collapsed onto a table. Arrived a few minutes later and started treating his wounds. She worked quickly, using all her skills to keep him alive. "You are insane," she said as she stitched his chest wound. "You could have died." "Everyone can die," said weakly. "The difference is choosing what to die for." "And what were you willing to die for today?" "Thought about it. Everyone on this ship, even the ones who hate us, even the ones who think we are nothing." He smiled faintly. "That is what humans do. We protect people, even people who do not deserve it." Shook her head. "You are too good for this universe." "No," said, "I'm just human, that is enough." Outside the ship, the 3 vessels waited in silence. They had received no communication from their hunting pack. They had expected victory cries. They had expected trophies. They had expected their alpha to return with blood on his claws. Instead, there was only silence. Something had gone very wrong. And soon they would learn just how wrong. The vessels waited in the darkness of space like hungry wolves watching a wounded animal. They had been waiting for hours. No signal had come from the hunting pack. No victory cry. No call to join the feast. Only silence. The commander of the lead vessel, an old named Bora, was getting impatient. He had served under the Alpha for over 100 years. He had never known the Alpha to fail. He had never known silence like this. "Send a scout drone," Bora ordered. "Find out what is happening on that ship." A small drone launched from the vessel and flew toward the horizon's edge. It found the breach in the cargo bay and entered the ship. Its cameras recorded everything as it moved through the corridors. What it found made Bora's blood run cold. Bodies everywhere, in the corridors, in the maintenance tunnels, in the environmental control center, each one dead, killed with precision and skill. And then the drone found the Alpha. The greatest hunter in history lay in a pool of black blood. Its head was gone, destroyed by some kind of explosion. Its body was covered in small cuts, dozens of them, like it had been slowly taken apart piece by piece. Standing near the body, looking directly at the drone's camera, was a human. He was not a big human. He was not wearing armor or carrying advanced weapons. He looked tired and wounded, with bandages wrapped around his chest and bruises covering his face. But his eyes were calm, empty, like the eyes of someone who had seen death so many times that it no longer meant anything. He spoke one word to the camera. "Leave." Bora stared at the image on his screen. His hands were shaking. He had fought in 100 battles. He had killed thousands of enemies, but he had never felt anything like this. Fear. True fear. "What do we do?" one of his crew asked quietly. Bora did not answer right away. He looked at the image of his dead Alpha. He looked at the human standing over the body. He thought about all the stories he had heard, stories that told each other in whispers, stories that most believed were just legends. The hunter of the crimson veil, the ghost who walks alone, the human who had faced every apex predator in the galaxy and survived. Bora had thought those stories were myths, lies made up by weak species to comfort themselves. Now he knew the truth. There is an ancient law, Bora said slowly, a law from the beginning of our species, the law of the superior predator. His crew looked at him with confusion. When a hunter defeats another hunter in fair combat, Bora continued, the defeated hunter's pack must acknowledge the winner. They must show respect. They must bow. We cannot bow to a human, someone said. It goes against everything we believe. Humans are prey. Humans are weak. We do not bow to prey. Bora turned to face his crew. His eyes were hard and serious. That human killed 12 of our best warriors, he said. He killed them alone with simple weapons on a ship where he had no advantage. He killed our alpha, the greatest hunter any of us has ever known, and he did it without fear, without hesitation. He pointed at the screen. That is not prey, that is a predator, the most dangerous predator any of us has ever seen, and if we do not show respect, we are breaking laws that are older than our civilization. The crew was silent. No one argued, no one could argue. Bora took a deep breath and gave the order. Power down weapons, tilt the ships, we bow. On the bridge of the horizon's edge, Commander watched in amazement as the 3 vessels lowered their bows toward his ship. It was a gesture of submission, something that had never been recorded in galactic history. The boat to no one. Until now. A transmission came through. Bora's voice filled the bridge. This message is for the human called. By the ancient laws of our people, you have proven yourself a superior predator. You have defeated our alpha in fair combat. You have earned the respect of the hunting packs. From this day forward, your name will be spoken with honor among our kind. We owe you tribute. We owe you recognition. We bow before you, hunter of the crimson veil. The transmission ended. Everyone on the bridge was silent. The alien delegates who had gathered to watch were frozen in shock. Princess stood in the corner, her silver face pale, her crystal eyes wide with disbelief. Commander finally spoke. Someone please explain to me what just happened. Stepped forward. She had helped to the bridge, and he was leaning against the wall, barely able to stand. His wounds were serious, but he had refused to stay in the medical bay. What just happened, said. Is that the most feared predators in the galaxy just recognized a human as their superior? They just admitted that one of us is more dangerous than all of them. Not one of us, said quietly, just me, and I am nothing special, I am just a man who learned how to survive. Walked over to him. Nothing special, you killed 12 apex predators alone, you made the bow, that is not nothing. Shook his head. Any human could have done it. Humans are survivors. We have been fighting things bigger than us since we lived in caves. It is in our blood. I just had more practice than most. Princess listened to this with growing shame. She remembered her words from the observation hall. She remembered calling him an insect. She remembered making him kneel. How wrong she had been, how foolish, how blind. She stepped forward slowly. The others turned to look at her. I owe you an apology, she said too. Her voice was small, nothing like the proud voice she usually used. I judged your kind without understanding. I believed that strength came from size and power. I thought that soft flesh meant weakness. She paused. I was wrong. Looked at her calmly. There was no anger in his eyes, no satisfaction, just tiredness and something that might have been kindness. You believed what you were taught, he said. Many species think the way you do. Humans are small, humans are soft, we look like easy prey. He smiled faintly. But looks can lie. They can, agreed. I see that now. Good, said. He turned and started walking toward the door. Then maybe something good came from today. Wait, called. That is all. You are not going to demand an apology. You are not going to humiliate me the way I humiliated you. Stopped at the door and looked back at her. Why would I do that? He asked. Humiliation does not change minds. It only creates anger. You have learned something today. That is enough. That is better than revenge. He left the bridge. Watched him go with new eyes. She had lived for 200 years. She had met kings and warriors and geniuses from every corner of the galaxy, but she had never met anyone quite like. A man who could kill monsters but chose mercy. A man who had been insulted but refused to insult back. A man who could be a legend but preferred to be invisible. Maybe, she thought, humans were not so simple after all. Maybe humans were more than they appeared. Maybe, just maybe, she still had a lot to learn. The horizon's edge limped through space like a wounded bird. Half its systems were damaged. The hull had holes in 3 places. Emergency repair teams worked day and night to keep the ship moving. But they were alive. Against all odds, they were alive. The nearest was 2 days away. Commander had set course for it immediately after the vessels left. Everyone needed rest. Everyone needed time to understand what had happened. The alien delegates had changed. They no longer whispered about humans behind their backs. They nodded with respect when they passed human crew members in the corridors. Even the little had stopped laughing at human weakness and started asking questions about human history instead. Word had spread through the ship about what had done. By the end of the first day, everyone knew. By the end of the second day, people had started treating the human crew differently. Not as servants, not as insects, as equals. Maybe even as something more. Spent most of those 2 days in the medical bay. His injuries were serious: 3 broken ribs, deep cuts across his chest, bruised throat, and more small wounds than could count. Any normal person would have been in bed for weeks. But was not normal. On the second day, he got up and started walking around the ship. He checked on the repair teams. He helped carry equipment. He did the same simple jobs he had always done. When people tried to thank him, he just nodded and moved on. When people tried to call him a hero, he shook his head and said nothing. He did not want praise. He did not want attention. He just wanted to be invisible again. But that was not going to happen. Princess found him in the medical bay on the evening before they reached the... He was sitting on a bed, looking out a small window at the stars. His wounds were healing, but he still moved slowly and carefully. Stood in the doorway for a long time before speaking. She was not sure what to say. How do you apologize to someone you treated like dirt? How do you make up for such terrible arrogance? Finally, she stepped inside and bowed. It was not a small bow. It was deep and formal, the kind of bow that they reserved for those they considered true equals. She held it for a full 10 seconds. Looked at her with surprise. You do not need to do that. Yes, I do, said, rising. I was wrong about you, about your people. I said terrible things. I made you kneel in front of everyone. I treated you like you were nothing. Her voice cracked slightly. I am ashamed of what I did. Was quiet for a moment. Then he gestured to a chair next to his bed. Sit, he said. Hesitated, then sat down. Let me tell you something, said. When I was young, I thought I knew everything. I thought I was strong and smart and better than everyone else. Then I met my first apex predator. He looked down at his hands. Old scars covered them, scars from claws and teeth and things that should have killed him. It nearly tore me apart, he continued. I survived only because I ran. I ran and I hid and I was terrified. In that moment I learned something important. Pride is a luxury. Survival is what matters. And the only way to survive is to learn, to grow, to change. He looked up at, you made a mistake. You were arrogant and cruel, but you recognized your mistake. You came here to apologize. That takes courage. That shows that you can change. You forgive me so easily? Asked, surprised. Forgiveness is not about being easy, said. It is about being practical. Holding on to anger does not help anyone. It just weighs you down. I have too many scars to add more from bitterness. Felt tears forming in her crystal eyes. She had lived for 200 years and met thousands of beings, but none of them had spoken to her like this. None of them had shown such simple, quiet wisdom. "What are you going to do now?" she asked. "After we reach you could be famous. You could be a legend, the bow to you. Every species in the galaxy would want to meet you." Smiled faintly. "I am going to disappear, find another ship, do another simple job, be invisible again." "Why, you could have anything, power, wealth, fame, why choose to be nothing?" Looked out the window at the stars. They burned cold and bright in the endless darkness. "Because I am tired," he said softly. "I have spent 20 years hunting monsters, 20 years watching people die, 20 years being afraid that the next battle will be my last." He paused. "I do not want to be a legend. Legends get hunted, legends get used, legends never find peace." He turned back to, "I just want to be a normal man. I want to fix things and carry boxes and watch the stars without worrying about what is coming to kill me. Is that so strange?" Thought about it. Her whole life, she had been taught that power and status were everything, that being at the top was the only goal worth pursuing. But looking at this tired, wounded human, she wondered if maybe there was another way to live. "It is not strange," she said finally. "It is wise, wiser than anything I was ever taught." She stood up and bowed again, though not as formally this time, more like one friend bowing to another. "Thank you," she said, "for saving us and for teaching me." "Thank yourself," said. "You did the hard part, you changed." Smiled, a real smile, not the cold, arrogant smile she usually wore. Then she left. Watched her go, then turned back to the window. Found him there an hour later. She sat down next to him and said nothing for a while. They just watched the stars together. "You could be a legend," she finally said. "You know that, right?" "I know. But you are going to walk away, go back to being nobody." "Yes." Shook her head. "You are impossible." "I am human," said simply. "That is all I have ever been. That is all I need to be." The horizon's edge reached the next morning. The alien delegates departed, speaking to everyone about what they had witnessed. The story of the human who killed 12 spread across the galaxy within weeks. It became a legend, a story told in bars and schools and government halls. But the hero of the story was never found. He had disappeared just like he said he would. Some people searched for him. Some people claimed to have seen him, but no one could ever prove anything. Became a ghost, a mystery, a reminder that humans were not what they seemed. And somewhere, on some small ship in some forgotten corner of space, a quiet man with hands was carrying boxes and fixing machines and watching the stars. Just a normal man, living a normal life. But those who knew the truth, those who had seen what he could do, they understood something important. Humanity was not at the bottom of the food chain. Humanity was the food chain, and was just one example of what humans could become when they had to. There were millions more where he came from. And the galaxy should be very, very glad that most of them chose to be invisible. Because if they ever decided to show their true nature, the monsters would have nowhere left to hide.